Hello, everybody. Um, I don't know if any of you were here last year. Had the great uh, privilege of being the speaker uh, last year, and my field is street medicine. Um, and I've known Greg for quite a long time, so it was really fun to come back to Aspen. Greg asked me to think of someone else who would uh, be a good speaker, who would honor the legacy of Albert Schweitzer and the vision that you all here are um, reclaiming, if I can say that. I can think of no better person than my dear friend Harsh Mander. Harsh is a human rights and peace worker, writer, columnist, researcher, teacher, and is chairperson of the Center for Equity Studies. He resides in New Delhi, India, so he had a long trip to get here. Um, he has defended the rights of the poor um, in order to counter the rising hate, violence, and lynching. He leads the national initiative called the Carwan Mahabat, or Caravan of Love, for atonement, solidarity, healing, conscience, and justice. He will tell you more about this, I'm sure. He has a PhD from Virgie University in Amsterdam. His thesis was entitled Vulnerable People and Policy Development in India, Designing State Interventions for Hunger, Homelessness, Destitution, and Targeted Violence. He's a visiting professor in South Asia Institute, Heidelberg University in Germany, and the Vrije University Amsterdam, Holland. He's a prolific writer. Please look into his books. He's written at least 30. He petitioned against the detention of undocumented people deemed to be foreigners in jails in inhuman conditions in Assam for nearly a decade. He petitioned for food and livelihood security for migrants during the COVID pandemic. The Friedrich Alexander University Erlangen-Nuremberg awarded him their inaugural Human Rights Award in 2022, and the Peace Research Institute Oslo has included him in his 2022 shortlist of people recommended for the Nobel Peace Prize. He was awarded an honorary doctorate at the University of York in 2024. Personally, um, I just want to tell you that Harsh is a courageous human being. His life has been threatened many times. Many of the good works that he has done in India have been attacked because of their goodness. He has inspired people throughout the world, but particularly for me within the street medicine movement. Um, I think he's just one of the greatest souls, and I think in the legacy of reverence for life and humanism, um, I welcome him to speak to you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim, who's become like a brother to me. Thank you, Greg. The two of you invited me, and I've come all the way halfway around the world to talk to you today. Um, Thinking of Albert Schweitzer, uh, what I'm going to talk to you about is what I would call equal reverence for every life and what that would mean for our world. We are living through profoundly troubled times. So much that is most precious in our world is today badly broken. Kindness, justice, love, courage, caring, compassion, and empathy. Look around at our world today. Democracy is crumbling in country after country. We see the hubris of highly centralized, opaque decision making that abandons the poor and is worryingly crony capitalist. Never before in human history have so few men owned so much. Unimaginable levels of wealth are concentrated in fewer and fewer hands, while millions continue to endure desperate hunger, dead-end insecure jobs at dirt wages, homelessness, and disease. $1 trillion is the wealth today of one single man. If this man spends $1 million every single day, it would take 2,700 years for his wealth to get exhausted. Yet 1 in 12 people in the world today every night sleep hungry. 1 in 2 are denied affordable health care. And 1 in 5 children are malnourished. The pandemic dramatically laid bare with ruthless moral clarity the catastrophic public costs of inequality. Millions of lives could have been saved if, over many decades, governments had made much greater investments in public health provisioning, and the explosion of mass hunger, joblessness, and the mass dislocation of millions of working people could have been averted had labor protections, social security, and wage levels of workers been secured, and had governments ensured more money in the hand of every working person. I'm convinced that when the history of these times will be written, this will be recorded as one of the most cruel periods in human history. There was, of course, much greater destitution, famine, epidemics in the past. But today, the world has the resources many, many times over to ensure that no child sleeps hungry, no child dies because they cannot afford health care. We have the capacity today to end all of this, but we choose not to. Soaring inequality runs hand in hand with surging politics of hate that threatens and targets vulnerable minorities, immigrants, and the working poor. It has everywhere become more and more dangerous to be a minority of any kind. They face persecution for the color of their skin, the God they worship, their, their race, their caste, their gender, their language, and who they choose to love. Every day there are news stories, somber stories of surging hate, fear, inequality. This fraught and pitiless age is a moment of profound moral crisis. Humankind has clearly lost its way. I stand here in memory of Albert Schweitzer. He spoke to humankind during another moment of civilizational crisis, when the world was broken like it is today, broken by deadly wars, colonial oppression, and the devastation wrought by the nuclear bomb, and the genocide of the Holocaust. He spoke luminously of reverence for life, for every life. We need again today to heed his words, to affirm that every life is worthy of reverence. No life is dispensable. No life is of any lesser dignity and worth than the other. In recent years, both my parents died. My mother in her late 80s, my father when he was 94. Over the years before they passed, they were in and out of hospitals, sometimes for many months at a stretch. I tried always to be by their side, immensely grateful each time that they recovered, granting us a few more years, a few more months, a few more days of their lives. But one thought would haunt me through all of this. My parents could afford the scandalous hospital bills only because of their privilege. If we were poor, there was no way my parents could have lived so long. While I was blessed that they were alive, I was continuously mindful of the cold reality that in my country and in much of the world, a person's access to healthcare does not depend on how urgent her need is. It depends instead on how lofty is her privilege. To be poor condemns you to early preventable death. I think of the homeless, mentally ill women I often see in our city streets in India, squatting on trash drums, covered with grime, matted, unkempt hair, nearly naked, name forgotten, family forgotten, muttering inscrutable words, walking here and there aimlessly, solitary, profoundly lost to the world. I long achingly for a world where she has exactly the same chances of life that my mother had, that she is treated in the same hospitals with the same respect, the same dignity and care which my mother received, and she receives the same healing that added many precious years to her life. A world I dream of in which there is equal reverence for her life. Can we draw people of every social class and identity into a wide public debate about building a new social contract that ensures that no human being is allowed to fall below an agreed floor of human dignity? What is this floor? For me, I imagine a social contract in which no child will sleep hungry, no child will sleep under the open sky, no child will be sent to work instead of to school, which is as good a school as for any other child her age. No person will be subjected to discrimination or violence because of her identity. No person will be denied free, good quality health care. And no older person will have to work or beg or live uh, with indignity. We must demand that we find the resources for all of this. And this would be possible by much greater taxing of the super rich. Thinking of Albert Schweitzer's life all these decades later, I feel a particular kinship to his years of work with people living with leprosy in Africa. Some of the most formative experiences of my early life was also with people with leprosy. In the 1980s, the number of leprosy patients around the world was over 5 million. Half of them were in India, my country, many of them indigenous people in the impoverished forested regions of central India, where I served as an Indian civil servant. My first posting was in a subdivision called Barwani. I was 27. A procession of protesters arrived outside my office one morning. This was strikingly different from any that I had encountered. It was a motley gathering of burnt out leprosy patients led by a communist school teacher. I say burnt out, echoing the title of Graham Greene's classic novel about a leprosy colony in the upper reaches of the Congo River. It was called A Burnt Out Case. These are people who had been infected with leprosy, people who displayed signs of the terrifying consequences of this infection dreaded for millennia, such as discolored skin, damaged eyes, broken noses, stumps in the place of fingers and toes. When I sat with them in my office, I found their demands were heartbreakingly modest. It was a time when it was not uncommon in towns and cities everywhere to have savagely segregated settlements for people with leprosy in their outer periphery. Exiled to an unsanitary patch of land outside the town, unserved by any public service, all they sought for their shabby neighborhood was a drinking water point, some drainage for the lowland swamp which they inhabited, and possibly some street lighting. I promised that I would ensure this, but I added, I would love to visit you in your homes. My visit to their colony, to which I kept returning, revealed to me a people more ferociously ostracized and expelled than any whom I've ever met before or since. Their monumental tragedy was that although their infection was entirely curable, it contained within it the unbearable burdens of millennia of brutal stigma and prejudice. The result of this was that the moment their infection was infected and known, they would be cast away by those they loved the most, their parents, their spouses, their children. They would be banished from their homes and their villages. They would scour for food in waste dumps and ultimately find their way to a shabby ghetto of women, men, and children who had similarly been expelled from their home and family. because of their infection with leprosy. There they would join a new community of exiles, find a new partner, and start a new family of the expelled. But they would be mercilessly and violently despised by the town residents. So would their children. None would give them work. None would admit the children in their schools. To survive, they would line the streets every day seeking alms by displaying their deformed limbs and sores to despising eyes. Some coins were thrown at them from a distance. I recalled a slogan that I heard: I do not want your charity, I only want a chance. I asked the residents of the leprosy colony one evening who among them would give up begging if they found dignified work. They immediately all raised their damaged hands, and this for me lit up the entire skyline. I brought together a band of compassionate Barwani, the town residents, to work with me, to organize for them the chance that the slogan so beautifully spoke of. We organized for them very modest but clean housing, employment, and weaving, a brick making center, a childcare center, admission to schools, which was very difficult, and a local clinic. We called their new settlement Ashagram, or a village of hope. For decades after my transfer from Bardwani, I would return to Ashagram with my family to celebrate Diwali or the New Year in friendship and to watch with wonder and admiration as they built dignity and hope from the ravages and ruins of their past lives. After this, in every district I worked, I sought out the inevitable leprosy settlement and tried to help them escape the dark despair and degradation to which they had been banished by the stigma of their ailment. Many Sunday mornings, my routine was to go to the leprosy colony with my daughter in my arms and join the residents for a meal as my daughter played with their children. Some lifelong friendships emerged. The central lesson that I learned was that their malady was not the bacteria. It was uninformed and brutal social prejudice and hate. Once when these are overcome, can humankind leave behind these horrific tragedies that have come down for centuries? With leprosy, this has just begun to happen. The numbers of leprosy infections have been reduced to 200,000. India still has 60% of these cases. With leprosy, two other maladies preoccupied me over the years. Both of them, not unlike leprosy, are the outcomes of stigma and gross impoverishment. One of them is tuberculosis, the other is mental illness. Let me speak here of TB. First, a brief biographical detail. In 2002, after a frenzy of religious violence largely targeting the Muslim majority in the western Indian state of Gujarat, where the chief minister was Narendra Modi, destined to later become India's prime minister. More than 1,000 people were slaughtered. I resigned my position in the civil service in protest, convinced that this was a state-sponsored massacre. I devoted a lot of my time after leaving government to working with the survivors of hate violence. But I also started working with rough, sleeping, homeless people in Delhi and other cities, and on the questions of hunger and starvation. In the course of our work, and there's so much to tell of street medicine, we learned that rough, sleeping, homeless people were 5 to 10 times more at risk of death than people who slept under a roof. And I think the evidence here, which Jim and Pat speak about, 10 times greater chances to die if you don't live in a home. We discovered that also that the one paramount cause of premature death among homeless people was TB. Friends from the University College of London actively screened the population of homeless men on the banks of the Yamuna River in Delhi, where I live, and found that among them, to their consternation and alarm, a higher incidence of TB than anything they had encountered anywhere in the world. Why homeless men in TB show higher levels of TB than most other populations, we don't fully understand, except that TB is classically a malady arising from deep impoverishment. But we understand better the trajectory typical of homeless people who pick up the TB bacteria. After they contract the ailment, they continue to work until they become too feeble for physical labor, meaning they're not even able to earn minimum wages to buy food and stay alive. If somehow they do succeed in finding a bed in a highly overcrowded TB hospital, after a few days the doctor would discharge them to make room for the next in a long queue of waiting patients. Perhaps the doctor would give them some terse but well meaning counsel. Go home, rest, be regular with your medicine, let your family take care of you, and eat nourishing food. But doesn't the doctor understand? I don't have a family. I don't have a home. What do I do? I have no option except to return to the streets and die. Unwilling to accept the incontrovertibility of this reality, we search desperately for solutions to save the lives of homeless people who are infected with TB. And as with most worthy ideas, the solution in the end was simple. For at least a year after a homeless person is diagnosed with TB, we would create a place of rest, treatment, healing, care that substitutes for the absent family. We call these recovery shelters and open them in 4 cities in India: Delhi, Jaipur, Hyderabad, Patna. There were numerous challenges to these efforts, but the results were immensely heartening. Many people who came to us close to death recovered and walked out a year later, able now to return to the world. The crises of our world are not just of inequality or of the climate crisis. We are driven by the politics of hate within and between nations. The Nazi history of Germany in the 1930s must always be a reminder that democracy is not just the rule of the majority, because that one day can mutate into fascism. Democracy is equally always the protection of every minority, of all their freedoms, including the freedoms to be themselves, to worship, speak, and love as they choose, and still be equal citizens in every way. Look at the flexing and rhetoric of war in our world today. One head of government is kidnapped, another is assassinated. The most powerful countries in our world, including my own, are silent or actively support the televised slaughter of children, aid workers, doctors, press persons. We are witness to a new arms race. I recall the words of President Eisenhower way back in 1953 when he said, and I quote, "Every gun that is made, every warship launched, every rocket fired signifies, in the final sense, a theft from those who are hungry and not fed, those who are cold and not clothed." He further warned that a world enmeshed in an arms race was expending not merely money, but, I quote, "the sweat of its laborers, the genius of its scientists, the hopes of its children." Let me speak of my own country. There are terrifying echoes in India today, not just of Nazi Germany of the early 1930s, but also of Jim Crow's America and of the genocide of the Rohingya in Myanmar. The Indian people have strayed very far from the dreams of India's freedom struggle, the pledges of India's constitution, that India would be a country that would be just, equal, and kind. We had promised that we would build a country where it would not matter which God you worship or if you worship no God. It would not matter what your caste, your ethnicity, your race, gender, wealth. You would be a fully equal citizen in every way, of equal worth and equal rights. Instead, India today is in the throes of an epidemic of hate. There was one partition in the land of India in 1947. Today, in my country, we are seeing a million partitions of the heart. And if you could play the first video, please. Yeah. This is a little excerpt. I wrote a book about this, which I called Partitions of the Heart, unmaking the idea of India. The battle that I think we are fighting for today is a battle
some of us call the idea of India itself, where it would not matter which god you worship, what language you speak. There was no conditionality to belong and to belong equally. It was 100 years ago that the Hindu Mahasabha was constituted. In 1925, the RSS was constituted. While much of India fought for freedom from the British, they fought for this alternate idea of an India of militant Hindu supremacist nationalism. Mahatma Gandhi's assassination was a moment where we thought finally this question would be resolved, because his last battle was precisely at a time when 1 million people had died in Hindu-Muslim riots and the country had been torn apart. He had the courage to stand up and say, no, India will still belong equally to Muslims as much as it belongs to people of every other identity. There was one partition that we saw in 1947 where the country was torn apart amidst rivers of blood. We're seeing a new partition every day. And this is a partition of hearts and minds. My German friends tell me repeatedly, every generation is asking the earlier generation, how did you let that happen? How did you let the Holocaust happen? The people of Germany allowed hatred to be fostered to levels that finally culminated in the Holocaust. In India, we are passing through a similar moment. And each of us need to be conscious of this moment, of our responsibility in this moment. Because later generations are going to ask you, and they're going to ask me, what did you do at this time?
My country today, Narendra Modi's India, is witness to the state at war with its Muslim citizens, and more covertly with its Christian citizens and their freedom of worship and their right to have rights. The people are today wrenched by the tumult of a state-led campaign of open hate targeting of its religious minorities. The economic base of these minorities, their livelihoods, their properties are targeted using both changes in law and violent mob action. Legal and social barriers have been erected to interfaith sexual relations and marriages. These are described as love jihad. The state is rewriting history to demonize targeted minorities. It is altering laws of citizenship to exclude Muslims from equal citizenship, and in the process, manufacturing mass statelessness. There are 200 million Muslims living in India today, the second largest population of Muslims in the world after Indonesia, but they're 14% of our population. And it is not just the state. Lynching reminiscent of Jim Crow's America have become commonplace. Crowds gather and performatively beat mostly Muslim men to death. The perpetrators themselves videotape the torment of the victims who scream piteously for hours, yet none come to their rescue. A child born to the lowest caste, in inverted commas, is beaten to death because he touched the water container of his a high caste Hindu teacher. Low caste teenage girls are routinely gang raped. And what about the ordinary middle class citizen? It has become customary for the rest of us to look away, as India's Hindu supremacist government viciously targets India's Muslim minorities, as their houses are bulldozed, as their worship is criminalized, their citizenship rights trampled, as some are thrown into detention centers or pushed at gunpoint across the international border. We look away also when not just informal tenements but even homeless shelters are demolished to beautify the city for international guests. To look away when the finest hearts and minds are incarcerated for years without trial because they dissent against the politics of hate and inequality. These are just a few fragments of India's growing darkness. I think again of Albert Schweitzer. To be human is to affirm the will to live, he told us. But an ethical life is one in which one's reverence of life leads one to live in the service of other people and of every living being. He was inspired in part by ancient Indian spiritual texts and the ideal of ahimsa and nonviolence. From Gandhi, from Martin Luther King, we learn that you cannot fight hate with hate. You must fight hate with love. And therefore, with a group of fellow citizens, we have tried to counter India's epidemic of hate with a campaign of what we call radical love. We call it Carwan Mahabat, which literally means a caravan of love. We resolved that we would go to the home of every person anywhere in the country who has been subjected to lynching, to share their pain, to seek forgiveness for what we have become as a people, to assure them that we will be with them for over the years as they pick up the broken pieces of their lives and as they fight for justice, and that we will tell their story. We will continue to tell their story. We will continue to tell their story until the conscience of our people does not ache unbearably. And if I lived in America, I would do a similar caravan of love for the African American boys and men who are killed by the police in every corner of the country. Go to their homes. Say that they are not alone, that we care, that we weep with you, that we will tell your story. We will fight with you for justice. Can we make a campaign of radical love? And a short video, my friend, if we could have the second one. मुझे लगता है कि कायर तो वो है जो हाथ उठाता है, कमजोर पर लोगों के दिलों में डर पैदा करता है। असली साहस तो वो है जो इस सब के बीच में नफरत का सामना करता है।
एक चोट है जो हमारे अपनी ह्यूमैनिटी पर लग रही है, हमारे अपने ज़मीर पर लग रही है, हमारी अपनी इंसानियत पर लग रही है।
सारे हिंदुस्तानियों की एक किस्म की सेंसिटिविटी भी नम हो गई है। अब हमारे लिए एक लिंचिंग का जो खबर आती है कहीं चौथे पांचवें पेज पे, उसको हम इसी तरह से पढ़ जाते हैं।
इन यात्राओं में अब हम लोग 1.5 साल से जा रहे हैं लोगों के घर, जो चेहरे नहीं भूलते। ज़्यादातर वो उन बूढ़े माँ बाप के हैं जिन्होंने जवान बेटे खोए हैं। वो ये कंप्लेन नहीं करते कि मेरे बेटे को क्यों मारा। वो इस स्टेज पर आ चुके हैं कि वो कहते हैं अरे गोली मार देते, तलवार से मार देते, इतना टॉर्चर करके क्यों मारा।
किसी को भीड़ द्वारा ये पीटा नहीं जा रहा है क्योंकि उन्होंने कुछ किया, इसलिए उनको भीड़ द्वारा पीटा जा रहा है क्योंकि वो कुछ हैं।
हमने देखा है कि लोग किस तरह से उन्हें सिर्फ मारा ही नहीं गया, डराया गया है। तो एक खौफ का पूरा जो माहौल है, एक खौफ का दौर जो पूरा पैदा कर दिया गया है, वो भी इस नफरत के साथ साथ पूरा हुआ है।
थ्रेटनिंग वॉइस में कहा जाता है और मारते हुए कहा जाता है कि भारत माता की जय बोलो, वंदे मातरम बोलो, प्रूव करो कि तुम पाकिस्तानी नहीं हो या पाकिस्तान को सपोर्ट नहीं करते हो, तुम सबूत दो कि तुम इस देश को चाहते हो।
उन्हें नहीं कहने की जरूरत पड़नी चाहिए हमारे आगे, पर वो कहते हैं। हम बाय चांस नहीं, हम बाय चॉइस इस कंट्री में रुके थे। हम इस मुल्क को बहुत प्यार करते हैं, हम तो ये भी करते हैं, हम वो भी करते हैं। पैर पैर पर उन्हें अपनी राष्ट्रवादी होने का सबूत उनसे मांगा जा रहा है।
शायद वक्त ये आ गया है कि इस देश की जो मेजॉरिटी कम्युनिटी है, हम लोग जिनको ये कॉन्फिडेंस है कि हम विक्टिमाइज नहीं होने वाले हैं, मुझे कोई मेरे घर से खींच के नहीं निकालेगा और कहेगा कि भारत माता की जय कहो, तो हम लोग किस देश में रहते हैं, किस देश में रहना चाहते हैं, हमने किस कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन को इनहेरिट किया है, उसकी तरफ हमारी क्या रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है कि हम लोग जानते हुए कैसे अनजान बन सकते हैं, ये अब हमारे लिए मुमकिन नहीं होना चाहिए।
तो इतना तो हमने तय किया कि हम अपने देशवासियों को ये बचाओ उनके खामोशी को के लिए देने के लिए तैयार नहीं। हमने तो बताया और हम बताते रहे और हम बताते रहेंगे। हम लिखेंगे, हम बोलेंगे, हम फिल्म बनाएंगे, हम हर तरह से बोलते रहेंगे जब तक कि आपका जमीन तक हम पहुंच नहीं पाए, तब तक हमारा काम बोलने का खत्म नहीं होगा। तो ना सिर्फ हम आपके दुख में शामिल हैं, बल्कि हम माफी भी मांगना चाहते हैं कि हमारा देश इस हालत में पहुंचा है, जिस हालत में नफरत इतनी फैल गई कि आपके परिवारजनों को इस तरह से मारा जाना पड़ा।
This video was just in the second year of the Carwan. It is now 9 years since we started this campaign. We've made more than 100 journeys. Our journeys do not end because hate does not end. And I wonder when in this country you join together and start a caravan of love. Families who've lost their loved ones to hate wonder where so much hate comes from. Why did they torture him so much? Why did no one come to his aid? They feel alone and abandoned as they battle loss and the hate of their neighbors or strangers who attack their loved ones. As we embrace and hold each other's hands, eyes fill up as they weep. In each journey to the homes of the families who've lost their loved ones to hate and violence, we learn with humility how much our simple gesture of reaching out means to these distraught families. The institutions of the state refuse to secure them the closure of justice. Even more painful is the profound lack of compassion and solidarity in local communities where these attacks have occurred. They rarely encounter empathy. They can no longer recognize this as the country to which they belong. Nowhere in our journeys of the Carwan have we heard reports of care and support for the survivors of the hate attacks by neighbors of other religions and castes. This is nothing short of a civilizational crisis, that we have allowed hate to curdle even our capacity for compassion. My own family was among those millions who were uprooted in 1947 from what is now Pakistan by hate mobs. Many in my family asked me, after all that we suffered in partition, you've gone and taken the wrong side. And my answer to them is, after all that we suffered in partition, who better than us can understand what it means to be targeted by hate for your identity? So I am on the right side. It is you who are on the wrong side. And if I can stick my neck out, it is something that I mean, what happened in the Holocaust was terrible. How can we subject other people to just the same? How can we? As I said, later generations will ask each of us, as they did in Germany after the Holocaust, they'll ask when democracy was corroded, when millions were abandoned to lives of want, and hunger and joblessness, when the politics of hate triumphed, what did you do? But you may ask, how do we fight the powerful forces of hate and inequality? How do we build a good society? I am haunted by this question. I ask myself obsessively, what is the way out of this profound civilizational crisis in which humankind finds itself? The answer is reverence for life, but equal reverence for every life. One lesson from the pandemic was that no individual escapes, no solo exits were possible. What had any chance of success was collective human survival. Solidarity alone between classes and gender, between nations, between people and the planet will enable us to overcome. We can only overcome together. We must challenge the global common sense that the pursuit of the highest possible pace of economic growth should in itself be the goal of society. A market society pursues exclusively the goal or the mirage of galloping economic growth. A good society must preoccupy itself with all of those who are left out of that growth story. Therefore, our new imaginations for the future must center on the ideas of solidarity and fraternity. Solidarity is the recognition that there are no solo escape paths. We can only overcome together. Solidarity is many things. It is my capacity to feel your pain as my own. It is my incapacity to look away when you suffer. It is kindness. It is collective struggle. It is the moral resolve that we must take care of each other. Fraternity literally means brotherhood, and there's a problem there because it leaves out sisterhood and other genders. But the Hindi word in our constitution in India is beautiful. It's a Sanskrit word actually, bandhuta. It means whatever may be the differences in our faith, our caste, skin color, ethnicity, and gender, we are bound to and with each other. It is the idea that we belong to each other. I suffer your pain, your injustice as though it is my own. There are many sibling ideas of fraternity. One of them is empathy. This is my capacity, as I said, to feel your pain as my own. Another is egalitarian compassion, and this is something that I feel very strongly about. It's not that you are here, I am here, and I'm giving to you of my compassion. It is that we are two people of equal value, equal worth. You've had a difficult time, so I'm here for you. But I recognize that a day can come when I will be in difficult circumstances and you are with them. The last 3 days I was with these beautiful people who were talking about their work with homeless people. And more than the stories of what they did for their homeless brothers and sisters were the stories of how much love they got from them. And then there's caring. I love this luminous description of what constitutes a good society. A good society, and please remember this if you can, a good society is simply one where we take care of each other. There's nothing more complicated. If somebody asked me to summarize my entire political philosophy, it's this one line: let us build a society and a world where we take care of each other. To mend and heal our broken world, most of all, maybe be driven by what I call radical love. This is love as politics, love as social philosophy, love driven by boundless courage, love robust enough to risk danger, anger, loss, isolation in order to protect another human being. Love based on such fierce courage and conviction that for my love and care for you, I should be willing, if called upon, to go to prison, to be isolated, to be shunned, or even to give my life up. The white and black people who fought racial segregation in the US and in apartheid South Africa, the millions on the streets of cities around the world today, including many Jewish women and men who are protesting what is happening in Palestine, all are driven by radical love. One towering, luminous historical example of radical love comes from the last months of Mahatma Gandhi's life, culminating in his assassination. Rewind to 1947 when India was violently partitioned into two nations, India and Pakistan. A catastrophic frenzy of mass hate erupted as 1 million Hindus, Sikhs, and Muslims slaughtered each other. Rivers of blood flowed. 15 million people trudged across the newly created borders, often with just a bundle on their backs or even less, leaving behind forever the homeland of centuries. Among them was my own extended family. The mass rage that this fostered fueled in India, a demand that grew into a raging fire that just as Pakistan was created as a country for Muslims, India should be a Hindu nation. But Gandhi was resolute. Our promise was right through our struggle for freedom that India would be a kind and equal country, assuring equal citizenship for people of every faith, including its Muslim minority. Mahatma Gandhi was not in Delhi to celebrate India's freedom on 15th August. Instead, when 47, instead he was in Calcutta, desperately trying to end the ceaseless butchery that was unfolding there. He undertook ultimately an epic fast, pledging he wouldn't eat a morsel until the last hand raised to kill and maim was not lowered. It was this that finally brought peace in Calcutta, as Gandhiji pitched his frail, aging body against this massive tsunami of hate. Gandhi returned from a Calcutta to a Delhi teeming with refugees, heaving with hate and violence, people displaced from their homeland in what was now Pakistan. But he implored millions not to migrate to Pakistan, that India was still fully their homeland. Gandhi believed in this idea so resolutely that he was willing even to give his life for it. I look back with immense gratitude for the immeasurable moral courage that he demonstrated at the time of India's freedom. This was his most agonized but also his finest hour. His was what I call radical love. Love of such conviction that it defied even the harshest tempests of hate with most resolute courage. One evening on 30th January 1948, as he walked to lead his daily all religion, he used to have every evening a prayer of every faith. So as he walked to this prayer, he was assassinated by a Hindu fanatic. It was his insistence on humane and inclusive citizenship and belonging, a country that India would equally belong to its Muslim citizens, that led to his assassination. It is radical love that illuminated the struggle by Martin Luther King against racial hatred. It is the same love that Nelson Mandela summoned after 27 years in prison to heal his country torn apart by decades of apartheid. Let me speak of another leader whom we don't count in the same breath, and I think we should, who more recently, in a moment of immense tragedy, with her people of New Zealand, showed a world driven by bigotry and hatred what solidarity and love can accomplish even in the darkest times. It is a lesson that which people in our bitterly divided world must heed, but will they? In Christchurch in New Zealand in 2019, a young man live streamed as he went to two mosques and shot dead 50 women and men in their Friday congregational prayers. The Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern immediately visited the mourning families, just as we do in the Carwan Mahabat, to comfort them. In cultural solidarity, she covered her head with a black scarf. As she embraced them, her face mirrored their pain, making plain to those who had lost their loved ones in the shootings that she shared their suffering. The following Friday, the Azan, the Muslim call for prayer, was broadcast on every television and radio channel before the memorial service in New Zealand. Outside all the mosques where the mosque where the terrorists had massacred the worshippers, and in mosques across the country, hundreds of men, women, and children assembled in solidarity with the families of the dead. They locked their hands like this. They locked their hands with each other, creating a wall around their Muslim brothers and sisters who prayed. Miss Arden again covered her head with a dupatta to show respect to the stricken people. Inspired by the Prime Minister's gesture, women all across New Zealand, newsreaders, police women, ordinary people, covered their heads with scarves. The Imam of this mosque, while leading Friday prayers 1 week after the terror attack, said to Jacinda Ardern, Thank you for holding Thank you for holding our families close and honoring us with just this simple scarf. And then he said, we are broken hearted, but we are not broken. He explained, we are alive, we are together, we are determined not to let anyone divide us. My problem with my country, your country, and much of the world is that we are not broken hearted. We are not broken hearted. We can see children being slaughtered. We can see hunger. We can see homeless people. We are not broken hearted. And that reveals how broken we have become. So let me end once again with just a few words. In our surrounding darkness, there are moments when even I wonder, can our world ever mend? But I'm convinced that even in these times, despair is not an option. Hope is a public duty. It is our duty to hope. And it is radical love, fraternity, solidarity, social caring, the mindfulness that we must take care of each other. And with these bricks, these bricks are necessary to build radical new imaginations for our shared futures. May each of us, all of us, join battle in small ways and big for this new world. A world that is kind, equal, and just. Let us together build this new world. A world in which your pain brings tears to my eyes. Your hunger and homelessness torment me. If there are chains on your feet, I feel my freedom is stolen from me. Thank you.